Very villain lackey in a film. I was just doing my job.
Just following orders.
So am I. Figuratively.
What a pile of
It's true, though. It's true.
Figuratively.
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 Yes.
That's why I did the hand.
I know. I saw it.
By the way,
I saw it's double-barreled, though. Got thick fingers.
More of a derringer.
I would say,
Is that what it is?
yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
Fine. Big palms he's got. Small fingers, big palms.
Yes, true.
We call him long palm.
Yes, we
I hate you, Brian.
Sorry, buddy. I'm sorry. It's just that he needs a big handle for his gun. Keep going.
I absolutely love you. No,
I love you.
So look, parents, when we talked about this yesterday, I think behind Mug Club, right? So we were talking about Mug Club saying, hey, if you have any tips on this, you have to go do the work first, though. This is what you should do. This is the exact thing that we want to see.
Yes.
So if you have something like this, LwC tips at protonmail.com. See if you can bring that up, guys.
LwC tips at protonmail.com. Think about the distillery that did the, I think, Roanoke, the drag show. You may not know this.
Absolutely.
Shut down. Shut down. It's a local story, but hey, there was enough going on there that they're done. They're not doing drag shows anymore. You can make a difference, and we want to help you. We will go to jail to protect our sources if you want anonymity.
Exactly, but this is what you have to do. You have to go and start the fight.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
You have to go and stand up for yourself. If you send us a video or an email or something after that and you've been stonewalled, we will absolutely jump in that fight with you, but we want to make sure that we are training people who are going out and fighting, not people who are depending on others to fight for them. That's what most people do with the federal government. We don't want that.
Right.
You have to fight for yourself.
So educating yourself as well. That snake in the Don't Tread on Me has 13 rattles for 13 colonies.
Yep.
And just a very simple Google search would have shown that district and that teacher.
Well,
that had nothing to do with slavery. And I'll tell you something else. I wasn't going to get a full back tattoo, but now I have to.
Do you? Yeah.
Okay, and it's going to be the Gadsden flag.
Yeah.
Gadsden.
I was going to Gadsden. Darn it.
Yeah, I know.
I was going to
darn
I was
it.
going to get your back tattooed to my back, but I don't have the room.
Yeah, I know. It'd be like a gay mad fold-in.
You know what? That's just not. That's uncalled for.
I think it's entirely called for. By the way, I hate both of you. Now, the patches
That's fair.
were reviewed, okay, just to be clear, by the school district and the charter school, Vanguard. Ooh, not a great name. Full of foreboding. Yeah, but they have a sister school in Tokyo. It's Black Rock High. Now, the charter school is told to have the parents remove it, and the assistant principal also told the Colorado Springs Gazette, Vanguard has zero tolerance on racial issues and takes these concerns very seriously, like my straight bangs. There's a lot of different circumstances that our code of conduct handles nicely. Then we decide upon a consequence. We always try to make our consequence a learning experience beneficial for the students, which makes you wonder what the school's reaction was when they first laid eyes on the flag to create such a policy. And the children were screaming. There was a different flag. The children were screaming. Name that film line.
I've seen that 3 times and it's still hilarious.
I have a question for you. Do you think the teacher has a point? Do you think the flag is actually associated with slavery? This is, you know what's more damaging than a lie? It's a half-truth.
Stupidity.
No, a half-truth.
I know.
Let me stick that landing there. A half-truth is the most damaging thing that actually exists as far as the press out there. It's associated, in this case, it's largely a lie, but I can understand some context if they want to say that at one point it was adopted. Okay, fine. It was co-opted, sure. But the history of this flag, no, it's not meant in any way to be supportive of slavery. But the half-truth is they want to say, well, people who were involved, at that point in time, slaves existed. The half-truth is what's so dangerous out there because people feel like they have the information and then they hold that opinion steadfast for the rest of their life despite the fact that they're an absolute moron. So let's go through the claims versus the truth here because a lot of people were saying, hey, can we maybe kind of dive into this? Historically, this matters. The child is right, that mom's a hero, but that's only the case if you know the history of the flag and why that assistant principal is a dummy. And you already knew that by the bangs. By the way, here's another question. Does any man out there like straight bangs? It's purely a woman thing. No man is like, I really like a woman in straight bangs.
I think it's like an 80s thing, right?
Well, Betty Page has straight bangs.
Yeah, I know, but that's the whole thing. Not everyone is Betty Page.
Okay, guys, I'm just a real aficionado of ladies in the 50s. You know what I'm saying?
It's like I look like Bombshell Betty. No. You look like a retiree from Hot Topic. It's just no one likes it. I'm sorry.
It's a dominatrix thing, I think. Actually, if you like to be dominated.
Oh, if that's the case.
Yakuza.
Well, great. If you want to be an understudy for billions.
My plan worked. I exposed Yakuza.
Here is the claim. Okay, the claim is that this flag is intrinsically tied to the Confederacy, Southern slave states. Let me just give you some examples of these headlines. All the references are available at louderwithcrowder.com, so you can read them for yourself. Don't take my word for it. Washington Post. The disgraced Confederate history of the Don't Tread on Me flag. The Gadsden flag was not the official flag of the Confederacy, as the Alabama Beacon called it, but several newspapers described it in those terms. Yeah,
What?
You did! You! It was you who described it in those terms.
You just destroyed your own argument. It's not.
It is not a flag of the Confederacy, but we said that once.
Asshole.
Several of us said that.
Yeah, and just keep in mind, I know some of you are new here. When people say, "Oh, Occupy Wall Street was the first," no, the Tea Party existed as soon as Barack Obama became president, and this was the emblem. This was the symbol of the Tea Party, by the way.
Yeah.
And you know who rose up during a lot of black conservative activists? Alfonso Rachel. I owe a huge debt of gratitude for my career. I was just a stand-up comic and actor until he brought me into a place called PJTV at that point. I believe Tim Scott came up with some support from the Tea Party at one point or was active. Michelle Malkin was back in the day. Herman Cain. So these guys were out there, I guess, waving the slavery flag. That's the claim they want you to believe. Here's the truth. And Gerald, you're a history buff.
I am a little bit of a history buff. It's actually tied to civil liberties with the origin in the Revolutionary War. I kind of civil liberties. I did a little bit of a Joe Biden there.
Yeah.
So look, let me just give you a quick background.
Let's go to 1775.
We'll go to 1775. It was created by Colonel Christopher Gadsden of South Carolina. He was a newly created Marine Corps, displayed this on the drums. It was also flown by Essex Hopkins, the first naval commander-in-chief of the United States Navy, right? So the rattlesnake, it was kind of used as a symbol for Great Britain. So what was happening is that Great Britain was sending over prisoners. Does it sound like Australia to anybody else? Ooh. It was basically being used as a penal colony. We passed some laws in the states that said you couldn't do that. They did that for about, 40 or 50 years. They said, okay. Then they came back and started shipping prisoners back over, and they were starting to commit crimes at a really high rate. Sanctuary cities as well. This seems like a very familiar pattern to history. And what they said is, hey, we have
When you say they, you mean?
They, meaning Great Britain.
Great Britain, yeah. I just want to be clear.
To the colonies, basically just to piss off the colonies. And they said, you know what we have a lot of here? Rattlesnakes. They don't have those in Great Britain. Maybe we should send those over to Great Britain and put them in the gardens where the prime minister and all the lords and everybody else walks, and they'll learn to kind of tread lightly in those areas. And so that's where the "don't tread on me" thing actually came from. So rattlesnakes began to
Benjamin
symbolize,
Franklin.
Right. It began to symbolize Great Britain and oppression.
Yep.
That's what it was. It was basically saying you're taking our civil liberties from us. So in 1751, Franklin wrote an article suggesting, like I said, sending those rattlesnakes to Great Britain because they were sending prisoners. 1754.
Which, by the way, I just love that he wanted.
I know.
You think about how proper these guys were. He's basically out there discovering electricity.
Vipers.
He's like,
A brood
but I
of
do
vipers.
think we should fight back against taxation without representation with my old trick, bag o' snakes.
The bag-
Oh, it's a bag of snakes, but I've never heard this sound coming out of a reptile before. It's like a baby rattle, only it's poisonous. Imagine seeing a rattlesnake and hearing it for the first time, and you have no idea.
Be like, well, that's a cool animal.
What's in this box? Oh, that sounds like
toy.
fun. I put it next to me lawn darts that I play out in rainstorms.
They were really pissed off about this, by the way. It had been going on for almost 30 years by the time Franklin commented on this, by the way. They had reinstituted that policy. But in 1754, Franklin actually published Join or Die, which was kind of this cartoon showing a snake depicted, kind of pieced into 8 pieces, right?
Yeah.
And they were saying, look, we are separate colonies, but we are trying to unite the colonies to fight a war. This was the French and Indian War that they were talking about. They wanted the colonies to unite for control over the Ohio River, and so each one of the 8 represented a colony. So this all had big specific meaning in unifying against tyrannical government, right? And unifying the colonies, right? So they actually had no idea what they were talking about. When
now, hold on a second. You're saying they. You're now talking about the school.
Talking about the school.
Yeah,
when
so say Great Britain, say school.
I apologize. I do this often.
Well, it's because we've all been screwed up in the head with pronouns and stuff.
I know.
Every time I read an article about Ezra Miller, it says there. And I'm like, well, is there a brood? Is he in a posse? Oh, it's the pronouns.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going along with it.
The school didn't know what they were talking
Vanguard,
about.
the school, not the corporation trying to destroy your country. Yes.
Which is what she was saying. Or, I mean, it says it's a private school.
After a brief history lesson, they said, all right, well,
yeah. Well, that's what it takes sometimes. Education.
And by the way, the Colorado governor, right? Is it Jared Polis?
Yeah.
He's a Democrat. Oh, I have it in front of me. I should just look at it. He tweeted support for the flag. He said, the Gadsden flag is a proud symbol of the American Revolution and is this And A, iconic? Did he write that?
And an iconic.
Did he say N or A?
He said A.
Gosh, your
Come
governor?
on, Jared.
Man.
And iconic warning to Britain or any government not to violate the liberties of Americans. It's a great teaching moment for a history lesson. And in this case, it's a great teaching moment for dumb teachers and principals. Remember I've told you experts are advisors? And this is the challenge with children going into school, right? When they're spending 8, 9, sometimes 10 hours a day away from their parents. They have to submit to the authority of these teachers. You want your children to respect authority to some degree, of course, but you want your authority. This is why parental rights are so important, to supersede that. Unfortunately, you don't have enough time with them, so your children will believe that they're right. In other words, unless you had a mom like this mom, who's a hero, by the way, the kid would go through life and, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know. I didn't know that this was a slavery flag. I'm sorry, I'll take the punishment and I'll move on. If I didn't have my dad go into school where they said, we have a zero tolerance policy, he said, well, hold on a second. My son was being punched in the face, and so he punched back. They say, well, we have a zero tolerance policy. He said, okay, son, that's stupid. Are we done here?
Let's go get ice cream.
If I didn't have a dad and a mom like that, I would have said, oh, zero tolerance? All violence is equivalent? Thank you, principal. I appreciate it. This is why you need to be involved. You need to be involved in your children's lives. And it's okay. Educate the educators.
Yeah,
But,
absolutely.
it's also, by the way, you were using the expression half-truth. Things like this are actually anti-truths. And what I mean by anti-truths is that they are trying to erase what's true about history and doing it because either they're ignorant or they're ideologues.
Yeah.
And that to me is that's actually more dangerous and more destructive.
It is, but she is unwilling to do any research as
Exactly.
well. And so this is what you're facing.
Yeah, I know.
So you have somebody who comes in and says, hey, that's not what this means. Somebody who's in a school, a
I've dealt
and
with it
learning
myself.
environment is unwilling to do any research, which is exactly what they're trying to teach kids to do. So here's what you can do. If the school came back and said something about that, have him do an effing book report on what the Gadsden flag is and submit it to the school district so that they can be educated on it. All they had to do was go, okay, you're saying it means something else. I didn't know that. This person said slavery. I thought slavery because I'm an
The
idiot.
only reason, sorry, I cut you off.
You did, but that's okay. Slavery because I associated it with the Vietnam War. I didn't
When you
know
were
the
little?
full history of it. No, now. Like when we talked about it, I'm like, I've seen that flag more with people protesting the government's
you see it next to
involvement
the
in Vietnam.
POW,
right?
MIA,
flag.
yeah.
Right, exactly. So that I didn't even think slavery when it came up. So I was like, all you have to do is look online and go, oh,
We have a
let's give you
Gadsden
that.
flag lighter here somewhere.
But isn't it a Texas thing on your license plates?
Not in Texas.
No, it's not on our
South
license
Carolina,
plates.
it
So
could
now
be.
Brian can't be bothered to do research.
I don't know nothing. I don't know anything.
Why do you do an accent?
But because
Okay, Vodka.
that's my defense mechanism. I become Italian. I don't know nothing.
What?
Because my first
I think
language is
it might be, there might be an option to get one on the Texas license plate, but I don't think.
Okay, there might be an option.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I told you, Stephen.
But it's not associated typically with our
Right.
Look,
That's
the only
what
reason
I
that
was gonna
this
say
woman
that.
recanted, just to be clear, is because there were enough eyeballs on
Yeah.
it. That's why you send in your tips. That's why we
Boom.
highlight these stories. It's more important than the top marginal tax rate. Think about this for a second. They want your child to spend 9 hours a day in a place where men and women, male, female, is a figment of their imagination, but the Gadsden flag represents slavery. The only reason this teacher, assistant principal, I guess was the one who laid down the law finally, the only reason they changed it was because there was some kind of visibility and accountability. That's what they fear, is sunlight. You don't think that teachers have the right to abuse their authority, and they do it for crying out loud? I had a teacher at my Centennial Regional High School. He demanded that you call him doctor. I called him Mr. May. I won't say his name because he'll probably sue me. Mr. whatever. Anyone out there from Centennial, I know that you watch. You remember this guy. I didn't call him doctor. By the way, he had a doctorate. He had a PhD in philosophy. And I called him Mr. He made me write a 500-word essay on the sex life of a ping pong ball because he also thought he was a comedian. Guy was a dick, and the guy did that just because he could. Otherwise, I'd get an after-school detention, which I wore with pride. I didn't write that shit. Now, this
you write
governor...
about how the
Sex
ping pong
life.
ball had a better sex life than the teacher.
There's a show in Mexico. Sorry, guys, not here. Not for this show. This is a family show. Sorry.
So this governor, by the way, also later compared the Gadsden flag